Howdy everyone, and welcome to a new season for GTRC. This year it is the All Japan season for the first half of 2025. For the main championship, as you can see on screen, we have the 2008 Super GT cars. And without further ado, let's count the five red lights in for the start of round one at Suzuka. We've got Brothers on pole with myself alongside in the front row, and we are underway with a lot of wheel spin from the GTR getting away off the line as I now challenge into turn one, already taking the lead before we even hit the brakes with Petrol coming in on the inside. So it's three different manufacturers in the top three. I believe that was Stiff B going quite wide in the background coming through the first corner, so he's lost out quite a few positions there. So I take the lead coming through the first sector of the lap, both starting on the hard compound tyres from the front row of the grid, probably meaning that why Brad had so much wheel spin coming off the line, just not getting any grip from that GTR. The GTR obviously being the only car in the field, I believe, that has a turbo on it as well, so a lot of wheel spin coming from that car. As the rest of the drivers now file their way through the first and second Degners. Happy Pappy being the only car to start the race on the medium tyres, from what I believe. So everyone getting their hard tyres stint out the way. As you see, TDC going quite deep into the hairpin. Pappy looking for this cutback on the exit, which he can't quite seem to find the grip there, but he's looking to make up a few positions whilst he's got those softer tyres compared to the rest of the other drivers. And I believe we haven't had any incidents as of yet. I believe it has been quite a clean start. Having said that, someone has just dipped a wheel into the gravel. I think that is TDC, and they're coming three wide down the back straight nearly, as that is Stiffy as well, who's dropped down to P11. So he was running up in the top five, I think, before he went off at turn one, and it has been a dreadful start for him. Not what we wanted to see. He's gone off again on the dirty tyres. I do think he is struggling at the moment, just trying to find his feet as we get underway. And then we got TDC now down to 12th, with War Eagle still bringing up the rear of the field. As coming across to start the second lap of the race, Brad has finally got heat into those hard compound tyres and takes the lead straight back. He is not wanting to give up his first chance of a debut win in the season. So the GTR is slightly better than the Lexus on its top end speed, but it will struggle a little bit due to its length through the corners, as well as the turbo still providing a lot more wheel spin than that Lexus. So it is a tale of two halves for this track and this car as to where the fastest car will be, because it is, as well, it is down to driver preference as to whether you want to be faster in the straight line or faster in the corners. And at the moment, Brad is seemingly taking advantage of being faster in the straight line and having a bit more confidence at the start. You see pushing hard, losing the back end slightly. Petra just keeping a watch in brief as well. The NSX, almost the complete opposite to the GTR. Very good in the corners because of its MR setup, and as well it has very low torque. It does seem to have almost too low torque. It doesn't quite accelerate as well, which is probably why there are quite a few NSXs struggling on that first lap of the race, because they just didn't get the drive off the standing start. So as I was mentioning with the tyres earlier, we have got a mandatory pit stop. So drivers will have to change either from mediums to hards or hards to mediums. There is no mandatory stop, but the tyre wear in this race will be so excessive that drivers will have to pit. And as well, there isn't enough fuel to get to the end of the race, as we see Bar now under pressure from Superbike coming into 130R. A very bold move, and the Bar just runs off the track trying to give him all the space. But Superboy taking his chances down the back straight again, overtaking that Lexus that seems to be probably the weakest car in a straight line. And we've got another battle behind as well, as the two cars quite clumsily try and come through the final chicane. I believe that was Stiffy and Happy Pappy in the final chicane trying to run side by side, which is very difficult to do. The cars not having a lot of mechanical grip, they rely a lot on downforce to, well, basically, hence why they are faster than the Group 3s, is because they rely on a lot more downforce than mechanical grip. So it is quite clumsy when you drop into second and first gear in these cars to try and rotate and not hit the car that you're racing. The three leaders are just bringing themselves slightly closer together. I think Petra, one of the quickest cars and one of the quickest drivers from the last season. And unfortunately, he had to miss quite a few races last year, but he would have been in the title hunt for both championships, I believe. He really was suited to his Corvette and Red Bull Junior car. So he's looking now to hopefully complete a full season and mount a championship challenge, and he's in the right position to do so. He has closed in slightly on myself and Brad is in the lead of the race. So hopefully he can keep on there. As I mentioned earlier, everyone on the hard tyres bar one car, so everyone running around with equal amounts of grip out there. It's all down to driver confidence at the moment. And Doug Barrow just slightly bringing himself into contention with the lead. He's not letting them get up the road either. He's trying to break away from the two cars behind him. You can still see in shot of Mike and Suzuka respectively. He is going purple this lap though, so Doug Barrow seemingly one of the better drivers off the start. He does seem to be able to get up to speed faster than other drivers, and that trend does seem to be continuing here as he comes out of the final chicane to potentially set the fastest lap of the race. We will see, and he comes across the line. Yes, he does. So Doug now with the bit between his teeth. You can already hear that NSX in the distance, so he has closed in more on the NSX than Petrol has been able to close in on myself and Bradders. Things just slightly spread out a bit now as the shuffling around on the first lap has sort of died down a bit. We have got, well, as I say that, we got Small Jack defending from Pappy again. So these two continuing their battle as they start to get bottlenecked behind Bar coming through the first sector. Not really a place to get past a car in this section of the track. It's normally single file unless you're in the wet, and there's a lot more grip on the outside lines. There is a small chance of rain for this race. Obviously, Suzuka being one of the few tracks in the game that has dynamic weather. But as you can see at the moment, it is clear skies up ahead, so no worries about rain as of yet. But rain would make this strategy seemingly simple strategy on paper. It would make it quite interesting because Pappy, if the rain did come soon, Pappy would have the best advantage because he would have used his softer tyres earlier in the race, using them for the start and making gains and not needing to run those hard tyres. So we will use the standard rule that if there is a rain shower and you do use wet or intermediate tyres, you do not have to make a mandatory stop. And Bar again into the gravel. So we've seen a few cars going off there, and Pappy with a fantastic exit coming out of Spoon. He's just gained two positions there as Simon seemingly just getting a sluggish exit in that GTR. He's cautious to put the power down for wheel spin threats. So Pappy, as I mentioned with those mediums, making good gains whilst he's got those tyres on, and he's trying to follow his fellow NSX through. Just heard someone there lighting up the rear end. I don't think that was, nothing came of that. As we quickly cut to TDC actually in the gravel, and I have taken the lead once again coming into turn one. So the lead swapped hands for the third time this race. So it is back and forth at the moment, and the Lexus finally getting up to speed after the initial standing start. With Petrol still watching closely. He's not let us get away whilst me and Brad have been fighting. So he is doing everything he needs to at the moment just to settle into the race. Petrol not really a fan of the NSX. He said on the live stream where we allocated the cars it was not suited to his driving style. But on paper the NSX should be the best car out there because it's the only car with an MR setup, even though the Lexus looks like it could be an MR car, but it isn't. So in theory the NSX should be the best car, best on its tyre wear as well, but we will see how that plays out because at the moment he's actually under pressure from Doug Barrow. So just to quickly touch on TDC's spin, I believe that was coming out of the final chicane because I don't think he went off in the braking zone. So that wheel spin that I did here was actually a car dropping it into the gravel. So unfortunately TDC has got a lot of work to do to try and catch up at the end of this race. But thankfully he's already on those hard tyres, so he can go long in this first stint, run the fuel all the way down to 0 before he changes over. And with how close the group is still at the moment, we've got two big groups of cars going around the circuit at the moment with one car on their own. I believe that is Hair Razor, who's in P8, who's just circulating on his own at the moment. So So the gap that I've built over this lap has been quite large. So whether Brad has made a mistake or is just struggling to keep those hard tyres in a nice operating window, it's quite hard to tell. As you see, our first stopper already. So only 5 laps completed on the tyres. There is a mandatory distance to run on each compounded tyre, which is 5 laps. That was carried over from the GT3 season that was at the end of 2024. So Small Jack already getting off those hard tyres, putting a medium tyre on. So he is very much out of sync on his strategy. He will definitely be going for a 2-stop race at the moment. But mediums can do around about 15 laps before they really start to suffer. So this is actually not a bad strategy, because the time for this race, it is another hour-long endurance race, same as the last main season length. And we did calculate that the amount of laps you can do in an hour is around about 33 for these cars on this track. So going 5 laps into a stint and then using tyres that can do 15 laps just about is quite an optimum 2-stop strategy. So we will see how that plays out. Mike just getting a little bit squirrely coming out the hairpin. He is under pressure from Superboy, who is making amends after a pretty quiet start. I think he was just trying to survive the chaos that was going on around him. There's not really many overtaking opportunities until you get to the second half of the track. Is he looking for another move up the inside of 130R? He does think about it, but he has to clobber the curb because Mike didn't really think he deserved any space, and Superboy not really getting alongside. So the NSX is a lot harder to pull alongside for that GTR than the Lexus that Bar was driving. So Superboy just trying to hang on again. I believe he will have to wait up until the end of the lap again, because there isn't really, he's not close enough into turn 1, and he will have to wait next for the hairpin to see if he's got any chance coming into that heavy braking zone there. And up in front, Bradders is now under pressure from 3 cars behind him nearly. I think that's 2 or 3 cars. I think Mike is a little bit detached. So yeah, there's 3 cars circulating now for second position, and Doug, despite not liking the Lexus either, he's adapted to it quite well, because he is hanging on to this leading group as it stands. And Petrol using all the track limits on the inside there. I think there was a bit of contact on the exit as Doug runs into the back of Petrol. He did have a very sluggish exit, losing the back end on the grass. So that does give Bradders a bit of breathing room as they come out of the hairpin again. So Bradders now needs to stretch his legs using that superior straight line speed of the GTR. However, the slipstream is very powerful in these cars because of the amount of downforce that they have. It is quite difficult to defend a position when the car behind does have slipstream, because all the drag taken off by being in the slipstream is quite powerful. It's more powerful than the GT3s for sure. So we will see. It could play out into Brad's favour that there aren't that many straights on this track. And he has got a bit of a healthy gap, so he's not going to be under pressure this lap, that's for sure, unless there is a big mistake into the final chicane. So hopefully I don't commentators curse him and he goes straight on. And same with Superboy as well. He has not got close enough to challenge into the final chicane. So another lap passes where all the cars just follow in single file. It is quite difficult for Suzuka, is notorious for being a difficult track to overtake on. So it's just slightly difficult. As Petrol goes wide, he dips a rear wheel onto the AstroTurf. And I mean, talk about giving Bradders a big break there, because now Petrol and Doug, I don't know if Doug made a mistake, because he's also lost a lot of time coming through either the final chicane or turn 1 as well. These two are now being backed up into the chasing Mike in the NSX. So this group now, it was at one stage a battle for the lead. It has now devolved into a battle for 3rd position. And Mike, one of the best drivers when it comes to race day, he does do a lot of practice from what I can see. He does do a lot of practice for these main season races. He does struggle to adapt from car to car, but that does explain why he does so much practice for these races, because he wants to get the best result possible. And you can see that his good pace is showing, because he's just kept it clean at the moment, not fallen, well, he's not susceptible to any pressure at the moment. He's kept a cool head and now he's staring at a chance of a podium. And he has actually broken away from Superboy a little bit, so that NSX treating its tyres a little bit nicer as well. I think the GTR will be one of the hardest cars to maintain its tyres because it just has so much wheel spin, and with its front engine layout, it will kill those front tyres as well around a handling circuit. But Doug, seemingly to have his chance again, he's now, after Petrol's mistake, he has now got a bit of a chance now, closed in that gap, and I think by the track map, Petrol has just gone deep at the chicane, and yes, Doug up the inside for the final corner, Petrol not wanting to get in his way and cause a collision, keeps it well out of the way. So Petrol now down to P4 after seemingly looking like he could have taken second place a couple of laps ago. So it is currently at the front, Lexus, GTR and Lexus in the podium positions. So despite the fears that the Lexus might be the worst car in the field, myself and Doug are giving it a good showing at the moment. However, there is still 3/4 of the race left, so anything can still happen as this group is far from over from being resolved. And there is another battle back here as well. Pappy and Bar having a battle, but Pappy has made up another position. He's now up into 8th place, so he is, as I mentioned earlier, making use of those medium tyres. He's not got that many laps left on those, only about 5 or 6 laps. So he is running out of time, and you can see, if I quickly cut to Bar, the hard tyres are slightly better. The hards and the mediums are quite comparable around this track just because of the high tyre wear. But hards will just be slightly better every lap now for tyre wear from this point onwards. With the recent update changes to the physics, the tyres now do hit a cliff almost. They do hit almost a brick wall in terms of performance. They just drop off on a particular lap, and the tyre wear is accelerated from that point onwards. And I am afraid Pappy may have hit that because there is a massive gap now to Hair Razor in front, and Bar is seemingly looming large in the mirrors of that NSX. Bar again sideways a little bit coming out of there, but he has managed to master the turning point for that corner, so no incidents as of yet. And quickly cutting back to this battle for the podium. Doug Barrow just keeping a safe gap. There won't be any threat coming down into turn 1, and as I see in the background, Superboy has capitalised and has made his way up into P5. I don't know if Mike had a track limits penalty or he had a stellar lap there to close in almost a second. But now Superboy up into 5th place. However, you can see the tyre wear on that GTR. It is quite excessive on that front right in particular. I think there has been another spinner in the background as well. I think that is TDC again, unfortunately. So it's just not been TDC's race as it stands. Seemingly not liking that NSX. He has driven that NSX in previous seasons when the Group 2 season, an open Group 2 season was running, so any Group 2 car was permitted. But the 2016 NSX was the meta for that. But TDC stuck with the 2008 NSX, the one present in this race, and did get a handful of good results out of it, but unfortunately it just wasn't comparable to a modern Super GT car. But he has driven that car before. I think it is just all about settling back into driving a familiar machine after spending almost an entire year not driving it. And Simon, again, one of the drivers who is notorious for being cool and calm, keeping out of the way of chaos and just running consistent lap times. He's doing quite a good job as it stands in 10th place, still ahead of Small Jack, who obviously did that early stop. I believe there is no real point in fighting this, since, as you can see there, the superior rotational grip from that NSX on its newer tyres, and I believe this is going to be a very easy pass for the NSX. However, the GTR coming back at him down towards 130R, it took the NSX the whole straight to pull ahead. So, well, Simon going a little bit deep at 130R, running onto the grass. So we will see if how far Small Jack can progress up the field. I don't believe he has many more positions to gain before he will have to make another stop. It is quite a big gap to make up, so that he might be able to overtake Pappy and Bar. But I don't think there's going to be much more than that. It is going to be all about Stiffy's final stint in this race. And I've just noticed on the track map, coming through the Dunlop curve, Superboy, apologies to him because I keep missing his overtakes, but he's now up into P4. So other drivers now struggling on their tyre wear, and you can see their petrol just trying to weave, trying to get rid of that dirt that he's just sustained on his tyres after going wide at the first Degner, losing the back end as well. So despite being one of the more stable cars, petrol just on the knife edge of the grip for that NSX at the moment, and Mike now looking to overtake to get back into P5. But the top three positions just starting to spread out now. It's everyone just adapting to this lack of grip at the moment quite differently. And again, Pappy losing the back end there. Pappy's tyre wear is surprisingly good on those mediums for being obviously on a tyre that is going to degrade quicker. But Pappy, as with Simon, he is one of the smoothest drivers, so he is probably going to be saving more fuel and saving some tyre life as well, so he can go long on this first stint and maybe even go half and half, which will be extremely beneficial to his hard stint later on if he can go halfway into this race on the medium tyres, so that way he can push really hard on those hards and not really worry about the tyre wear. I mean, as I've said that, I think everyone is pushing really hard, and that explains why the hard tyres are so bad. And that massive gap that Stiffy had to make up, he has already made up that gap. He is now on the back of Bar once again for an overtake, and you can just see how much confidence he has coming through the first sector. Can he pull off a surprise overtake in the S's? It is very unlikely that there is a way past here, but he's just got so much grip. Even with lower fuel, I don't think he took any fuel on board from what I remember. So he's pulling to the outside for a move into Degner 1. Can he make it work? No. Yes, he can actually. So despite using all of the curb and a little bit more coming around there, he has managed to find a gap somehow in one of the most awkward corners on the track. So that's a great move up into P9 now. So he is making use of that two-stop strategy. And there was a pit stop behind. I believe War Eagle has come into the pits for his medium tyre stint. I believe this will be a two-stop strategy for him as well, considering that mediums being taken 38 minutes into this race is quite excessive. So I don't think he's going to quite get through that, especially with the GTR. And I think I just caught a glimpse of Mike going wide at the 130R. But Doug Barrow has been reeled in by these three. So these three all were using the slipstream, all pushing each other closer to the back of that Lexus. So we could see yet more position changes for this final step on the podium, as the NSX of Petrol has a great slipstream down towards turn 1, not quite close enough to form an outbraking manoeuvre. He is pushing the track limits very hard though through that first corner. He almost dipped another wheel onto the AstroTurf and went wide. But he has managed to just keep close enough as it stands. I'm going to ride on board with the NSX coming through here. And just quickly grabbing second gear, you can see there that he's having to use lower gear selection just to get the front end to bite. Obviously, he is in the dirty air of the Superboy in front, and as well the hard tyre is now almost at 50% wear. So the drivers are struggling a lot out there, trying to get to that second stint. All the drivers just trying to survive at the moment, and a massive closing speed there coming into the hairpin, cutting back for a straighter exit. I think Doug Barrow has just lost the back end up front because he was taking a very tight line coming out the hairpin. So I think he did just get a bit of wheel spin. And Petrol seemingly having a bit of a wobble halfway through his first stint. He seemingly regrouped, and you can see they're having a wobble on the track as well. But he has now got a charge on because he is now right up the rear wing of that GTR. I think there will potentially be a lunge coming into the final chicane here if he can just keep close enough, not run wide in the dirty air, but he's actually lost out a bit there. So it just shows you the effect of having two cars giving you dirty air through that very high-speed 130R curve, and it's just not quite paying off for him at the moment. This is a bit of a slipstream train, so I don't think Petrol just quite has enough speed, because you can see again he is very quick coming out of the final chicane, but he's not close enough. It's not an overtaking opportunity where you can just lunge up the inside is turn one, so it is quite difficult to get anywhere near as it stands. So apart from this battle, everything else has just settled down a little bit. Everyone, as I mentioned, just trying to survive until the second stint. Petrol getting all out of shape, coming through the Dunlop curve. And Superboy as well taking a massive wallop of the curb as well, trying to minimise the run through the corner, getting all out of shape as well. So you can see that the rear tyres, despite having more grip, the rear tyres are taking a punishment. So I believe the rears will be overheating rather than being worn down, because everyone's front tyres do seem to be extremely worse than their rears, as you can see on the Lexus here. And it will be at this point in the race where the drivers who use a wheel instead of a controller will be metaphorically rubbing their hands together, because they will know that they have been able to just be smoother on their steering inputs and just save a little bit of tyre wear. This is their moment where they can push to gain a few positions here, because they will be able to, well, they'll hit that cliff of tyre performance later in the race compared to the controller players. And Mike at the moment, who sits in P6, he has got everyone in front of him is on a controller, so he should be able to make up quite a bit of time here. He has just lost the back end a bit, clobbering the curb, which is to be expected in these older cars. They do have quite stiff suspension, where there are a few curb wobbles. So you just got to be careful of that as it stands, because the cars might not have enough grip, as evident by Superboy going off track. That hands position to Petrol, just doing exactly what Petrol did a few laps ago as well, just dipping the outside tyres onto that AstroTurf. There's absolutely no grip out there. Suzuka, one of the worst tracks for running wide on. There's just no grip on that AstroTurf and that tarmac runoff because of the amount of marbles, especially at this stage in the race when we've already been running for 27 minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, with Mike having a bit of superior tyre life now, you can see how he is right on the tail of that GTR, coming through the technical section of the track, using all the track limits there as well, trying to get a good run. I believe he's not close enough for a lunge into the chicane, but he can set himself up for a run, potentially into Spoon, and he will have a better exit there. He's not lost the back end. Superboy did lose the back end, trying to put the power down, maybe feeling the pressure. And just in behind this as well, Pappy and Barr continuing their battle. So despite having that slight interruption from Stiffy coming through on his two-stop strategy, these two find themselves once again in a battle, and Pappy's tyres have definitely seen better days, but he's done a very good stint right now. Lap 14 and 15 were the maximum amount of time you did want to spend on the mediums. You were going to spend more time on the hard compound. So he has done very well to get to this stage in the race and make up a couple of positions from where he started. So if I was him, I would be getting off these tyres now, because he's already ran almost a full tank of fuel. And I believe, yes, if he fueled up now, I think he would still have enough fuel. If he did top it up, he would have enough fuel to get to the end, plus an extra lap if the timer was to run out whilst he was still on a lap. And actually it is Barr that bails into the pit lane, so he's looking for an undercut. See that Lex is quite hard on its fuel, seemingly, because you have to rev it out to get the power. It's no turbo in that Lexus, so all of the power comes from just natural engine performance. And you can actually see there on the GTR that it has almost ran out of fuel. So Brad is new to the championship, new to driving this style of car as well. He is mainly a GT3 driver, as is most drivers on Gran Turismo. That's normally what the popular class of racing is. So this is quite alien to Bradders as well, but he's doing a very good job at the moment for his first GTRC race. And Doug feeling the pressure now. He's got Petrol, who has made amends for a few of his excursions earlier on. Petrol looking to get back into third place. And Doug Barrow has seemingly done quite well, though. He is going to be able to go quite a few more laps on this first stint than Bradders in front. And you can see, I think he's actually pulled a bit of time here. Because Bradders now can be seen just up the road, only briefly in shot. So these two, particularly, are slowly closing in. As we reach the halfway stage of the race, Doug taking a lot of curve there, just trying to keep the car. I believe he's trying to use the grass for a bit of extra rotation, a bit of extra track width, just so he can keep pushing flat out through that corner as Bradders bails for the pit lane. So that will be for a one-stop strategy, but boxing for the medium tyre. So he will have an undercut on myself and the cars chasing. iRacing will also come into the pit lane. I think Bradders did briefly just have a track limits penalty that he will serve on the next lap. And you can see Small Jack now has been promoted up into P6. Now this is a net second at the moment, because you can see the gap he's pulled over Bradders, even though he's made that extra stop. And Bradders just exiting the pit lane now, so he has got quite a big gap. Despite having to be, he's going to have to pit again, and he will actually be pitting quite soon now. So everyone seemingly changing onto their medium tyres roughly at the same point. So Small Jack is definitely not out of this, because he has made up a lot of time doing an extra pit stop. So it is a viable strategy change. It is just a shame that there aren't more cars doing it, because I think if there were some cars who were fighting for this podium position, it would be quite interesting to see a split strategy here, as Superboy going onto the grass again, giving Mike half a chance maybe into Spoon Curve. He is a lot closer than what he's been on previous laps. But the GTR just seemingly having the legs on acceleration coming out of the hairpin. That hairpin is one of the NSX's weak spots, but Superboy goes wide. Mike seemingly off put by the Superboy going wide. And he cuts the corner a little bit, but I don't think he definitely didn't mean to do that. And thankfully no track limits penalty as of yet, but that was unfortunately cost him time. He just got a bit perturbed by the GTR going off the track. I think he was worried about it coming back on. And you see there again, Superboy going wide. He's going to have to box, I think, at this point. He's just struggling too much on those old tyres. I don't even know if he's got the fuel to do another lap, so he is going to be forced. Well, he actually stays out for one more lap, so there is just about enough fuel. But he really is struggling at this stage in the race, as Small Jack comes into the pits for the second time in this race with just 1% fuel left. And Doug now moving up into second place after Bradders' pit stop. So this will be for a net P3. However, there are some hard chargers coming up behind these two. And Doug just doing a good job at the moment just to keep that NSX behind. Doug is notorious for being a very good defensive driver. As I've mentioned many times in previous races, he does demonstrate his knowledge of where to place the car to keep a faster driver behind him. And at the moment he is just waiting. I presume he's dreaming of some fresh tyres right now, because he is very much, despite being in arguably the worst car on paper, it is still a very positive third place that he could get in this race if all else goes well. But he's not going to have it easy from that NSX behind. As you can see, Superboy having a track limit penalty for his excursion at 130R, I believe that is. So this might give Mike the chance that he's been waiting for to get up into P5 on the lap where they're going to both pit, I believe, for some fresh tyres. So this is crucial if that GTR has enough of a braking zone to slow down and give the NSX a chance. And I do believe that Mike is going to quite easily take the position, or he just missed out on it. Superboy just making it to the apex first. I believe he was still a bumper ahead, because I didn't see the position flash on screen. So these two will now be bailing for the pit lane. So it is a battle of the pit crews, battle of who has saved a little bit more fuel. They're both on 2% fuel actually, so that is negated, as well as Petrol pits for an undercut on Doug. So this will obviously be for his medium tyres. So this is all about how much fuel has Doug saved, because I did mention he had done quite well to get extra fuel on board, and that will obviously help him spend less time in the pit lane, as he will come into the pits one lap later and have to spend less time refueling. So it is going to save him some time on strategy, which could help negate the effect of that undercut that Petrol is trying to perform. But you can see now Bradders still has that healthy margin over Petrol, who is racing in 4th position behind. So that undercut that Bradders has performed has worked quite well. He has now been able to just comfortably come out in 3rd, and he's now running at his own pace, just doing consistent lap times, which is what he needs to do. The unideal thing, which I unfortunately think has happened here, is some cars have come out in traffic. However, I believe these cars now, this might not actually be traffic, because I think Small Jack is actually in P7. This will become P6, I believe, once all the pit stops have filtered out. He is genuinely running in P6, so Small Jack isn't actually traffic. He is well within his right to be in this position, because he has now done that second stop, and he is now actually fighting the 2 GTRs ahead of him for position. So these strategies have played out quite well for these drivers, because there isn't really that much traffic. It is quite a long lap around here, so there isn't much worry of compact, almost packed racing. It is quite spread out, which does work quite well if you're trying to run your own race, trying to close in on an undercut, as Doug Barrow now finally comes into the pit lane to get onto those medium tyres, which he's been begging for, I believe, for many laps now. So, as I mentioned, he will also have to take on less fuel. Bradders flies past, as you would expect. He was about 6-7 seconds ahead of these drivers, and Doug just leaving the pit lane now, but he has been jumped by Petrol, so that was a mighty undercut lap from Petrol to get in the pit lane, and he's pulled a massive gap. So whether Doug made a mistake or was just genuinely struggling that much with old hard tyres, he's pulled a massive gap over Doug. So that podium seemingly getting away from Doug, but we will see how quickly he can heat up those tyres. He's definitely not out of this. He's still very much in shot, but he has got to think about the cars behind as well, because these 3 behind have shown good pace as it stands, and Stiffy now up into P6, so I think he has just overtaken Razor on that previous lap, but he has got a track limit penalty for his troubles. We haven't really seen much from Razor. He has been, I believe he was that car that was running on their own, whilst there was the leading group and then the midfield group circulating, where there was just loads of cars running together, and then there was just Hair Razor on his own. But normally those races where you don't see much from the drivers are normally the best races, because those are the ones where you know that there's nothing dramatic happening and it's just consistent lap times being pumped in. So Razor is definitely staring at potential P5 there, maybe even a P4 if that Lexus starts to show its true colours in the hands of Doug and just starts to give up the ghost a little bit, because I think you've got to make up your time whilst you can in that Lexus. It does seem to struggle towards the end of the stints. And the GTR there with massive overspeed coming in the straight lines. Razor having a little look up the inside, but not fully committed to it. Doesn't want to risk everything yet. We've still got over a third of the race left, so there's no point going for a risky dive bomb yet, especially when there's tyre barriers waiting in that bus stop, that final chicane, to punish drivers who do get it wrong. But this is good pace from Razor, as Stiffy has shown up front that he's one of the fastest cars on track. So as long as he can keep up with the NSX in front, he has got a good chance of closing in and making up a couple of positions here. And Mike, I feel like every time we cut to Mike, he is just tantalisingly close to gaining a couple of positions. He has been really good in the dirty air, just keeping close to his cars in front, but unfortunately he's just not been presented with a good enough opportunity yet to get up front. So all of these drivers running around on fairly even pace, As a quick side note as well, I think I have just made my pit stop on that last lap, so I believe everyone has done at least one stop now. I think War Eagle is the only car to make another stop, as he was quickly changed to that two-stop strategy. So I think everyone has made at least one stop in this race. So these are provisional positions for the end of the race. This is how it's looking for battles towards the end of the race. And I think the gap, as I mentioned before everyone pitted, the gap between Bradders and Petrol has come down. It was Bradders and Doug who were the drivers in second and third, respectively, but now it is Petrol, who does seemingly find a little bit of extra pace when he's the chasing car. He does find it quite comfortable to be the one who is applying the pressure to another driver, and he just seemingly does get an extra 3 or 4 tenths when it comes to race day. So he is putting in those lap times now. I believe that has been, yeah, that previous lap was one of his fastest laps of the race, and I think the lag there, I thought he had gone wide, but I think it was just lag, and he's gone a bit wide again, so he is pushing the car very hard to try and catch up. I'm pretty sure he can just about see Bradders up the road, and Superboy, once again, the next target for Small Jack in this race. So probably mover of the race has been Small Jack, sitting in P6 at the moment, and he's not looking to stop anytime soon, because he has got that GTR in his sights. But Superboy just pulling away a little bit. He was a lot closer. These two were a lot closer together coming out of turn 2, so I think just the understeer provided by the dirty air has just helped Superboy a little bit, build a bit of a gap, which is what he needs to do. He needs to keep it like this if he's going to at least hang on to this position. He needs to build the gap through the first sector whilst he can. I think we have just had a crash somewhere, and a bar has got front end damage. I did see that, so I think he has clipped the grass coming out of the Dunlop curve. It is one of the corners where the car understeers the most, and it is a mistake that I'm pretty sure most Gran Turismo players have made, where they just understeer wide because the car doesn't have quite the grip. You can already see that despite these mediums only being about 10 minutes old, they are quite bad now at this point. So Bar does get the damage fixed. It is on light damage, so there's no heavy damage, so he doesn't have to come into the pits to get that fixed, and he can carry on with his race. But I think unfortunately that is giving up his chances of getting any higher in the roster, because there's no challenge from the car behind, no challenges from the cars in front. So you see side by side into turn 1 there is a bit of contact, but Small Jack and Superboy both keep it on the track, and now he's up into P5. So this two-stop strategy is, I mean, I'm quite fairly shocked that not more people notice this, because this is seemingly paying off extremely well at the moment. We've only got 18 minutes left in the race, and there is no sign of Small Jack slowing down, and he can still grab a P4 in this race. So best of the rest of those who didn't finish on the podium, as Doug just seemingly not adapting to the mediums as well as he was with the hards. I do believe there was a bit of discussion between the drivers coming into this race that hard tyres did surprisingly feel better than mediums because of their longevity, and there wasn't really much difference between the performance of compound. So I think some drivers did actually prefer being on hards than mediums, because mediums were just too unpredictable. And just a quick note on the weather as well. It has become overcast. It was sunny a few laps ago, but the overcast weather making the track conditions a bit cooler, which is potentially hampering some drivers' performance out there, because they're just not used to, they're losing tyre temperature at the moment. I don't think it will be as drastic as if you were to pit brand new tyres in this weather, but it does make a little bit of a difference, as the tyres will lose a bit of temperature, lose a bit of grip, and you will start circulating a little bit slower around the track. But at the moment, everyone just keeping it together. Everyone's saving themselves a little bit for a last push at the end of the race, because what you don't want to do is push too hard at this stage, and then end up completely running out of tyres and then being swallowed up by the pack behind, especially if you're fighting for P4, as P4 to P8 only covered by about 4 seconds, so you do not want to be pushing too hard before the battle has even begun, essentially. And Petrol still pushing hard, still using the grass as part of the racetrack, just to slightly edge up to the back of Bradders every single lap. I think the gap still is coming down a little bit. It has stalemated slightly. Bradders doing a good job to soak up the pressure. I presume he has seen that gap has come down a little bit. And Doug still on his personal best, still setting personal best lap times as it stands. So he is getting the hammer down. As you can see the cars behind, you can just see drifting again. That is probably Doug's least favourite corner on the track. I have seen him taking an unusually tight line on the exit on a few laps there. So he is obviously losing the back end on multiple occasions and just trying to save it, trying to stop it from hitting the wall. And that gap between himself and Stiffy has already come down. So this is surely a battle to watch for the next lap, as there is quite a close group between these two, Hair Razor and Mike. It did actually look a bit closer on the track map. I thought Mike was getting ready for an overtake, but I think that is the story of Mike's race, that he has been ready for an overtake, but he just hasn't quite been close enough. But I can sense something brewing here, because it's been relatively clean from everyone so far, and I believe that tensions are gonna boil over at some point, because all these drivers are now sort of closing in on each other. They're separating into their own groups, but the battles are getting closer, the gaps are getting smaller, and you can just see the confidence of that small Jack behind Doug there, even with dirty air. The rotation of that NSX just performing a lot better than the Lexus at this stage. And you can hear the tyres squealing. So Small Jack driving this car on a knife's edge, which is surprising. You did see this from Petrol earlier on in the race as well, that the NSX is quite unstable when it gets to heavy tyre wear, despite having pretty much the best traction out of all the cars. And the closing speed as well. So Doug Barrow's definitely under pressure as it stands. This is quite close between these two. So Doug getting for trying to change up his driving style a bit there, because he has got a very good exit coming out of hairpin, so he has protected himself from another challenge. And there was another battle there. I think Superboy did just lose the back end, but I think he is still on track at the moment. And these two still running at identical pace at the moment. I don't think this gap has really changed at all. So these two, I mean, probably going to be close championship rivals if it stays like this, because these two have just been circulating at exactly the same pace. I don't think the gap has gotten any bigger or smaller throughout this entire race. And Doug Barrow has got a track limits penalty. So whether that was at the chicane, because he is quite slow coming down the start-finish straight, the NSX does have a good slipstream. There's still not quite enough of an overspeed for Small Jack behind. So Doug once again holds off any sort of attack. But I think he did get that penalty at the final chicane, because he did have a quite slow exit. He was under slight pressure there. But still setting personal best. So all the drivers out there getting seemingly a lot quicker. And I have just noticed on the track map, Petrol is almost there, challenging for that P2. We have got just over 11.5 minutes left in the race, so we are entering the final 6 or 7 laps. And Petrol has been working extremely hard to close this gap down between these two. Same goes to Small Jack as well. So the NSX is seemingly coming alive at the end of the race. And Mike having another look, so another NSX on the offensive. Razor, for the first time, having to go defensive to maintain that position. He will have compromised his exit a little bit. He runs onto the AstroTurf, but I think he did still have enough of his car on the tarmac to get good purchase off of the spoon curve. And I just don't think that NSX is amazing in the corners, but for Mike, it just doesn't have enough grunt in a straight line, really, even with a slipstream. And there is a crash somewhere on the other side of the track. That is TDC. Unfortunately, once again, just not having a nice race, unfortunately. Hoping to probably bounce back at the next race at Watkins Glen GP, I believe. So, just not his day, unfortunately, but at least it is worth finishing the race. Every position in this championship scores points because they use the British touring car style points system. So it is worth reaching the end of the race. As Mike actually, as we were watching that crash, Mike has finally made that position. So I think Razor might have lost the back end of the car coming out the chicane, which is what is most likely with that GTR. So Mike, patience and persistence pays off, as he's finally got his way up into P7. And Doug just dropping back quite significantly from Small Jack now. So that NSX giving up the ghost at the end of the race, unfortunately for him. And Petrol as well, he has actually lost quite a bit of time there. So unfortunately the battle for second has sort of died down a bit, as Brad, whether he's just got the hammer down a bit or Petrol has had to serve a track limits penalty or something similar to that, I'm not quite sure. But Petrol's the pressure that Petrol is applying right now is seemingly not working at the moment. Brad is definitely holding his own as we enter the final stages of the race. So this battle between War Eagle and Bar is actually hotting up now. I believe War Eagle has actually just made a second stop. So he was running in 9th at one point, and he's now pitted to change on to his second set of mediums. And as you can see there, the amount of grip it's given him, he's already caught back up to Bar, who runs off the track at Spoon for the third time, I believe, from what I've caught in this race. So War Eagle trying to take that P9 back from Bar as they head now through 130R. I believe this will be quite easy for War Eagle on his fresher tyres. Just able to hug that tighter line and set himself up better for the braking into the Casio triangle. So it has been a quiet race from War Eagle, but I think he has noticed what the Stiffy was doing on the two-stop strategy, and he's made it work for himself as well, because War Eagle not being able to attend the practice sessions, unfortunately, so I don't think he was quite as confident coming into this race, but he's done a good job as it stands, just to keep up with the other drivers who spend a bit more time practicing, and he's using this two-stop strategy quite well to his advantage, as we have Pappy, Simon and TDC rounding out the final positions in the race. And Bradders, I think, now has been the one to make the mistake, as Petrol has closed in once again. So the battle for second place has become open again for any guesses as to who's going to get second out of these two, because it seems to be the story of the race that many of the drivers are running almost identical pace, and they are waiting just for a mistake from the car in front to make that pass. So it is incredibly competitive in this season, as there's just the field spread isn't that large between the battles on track at the moment. And Doug possibly checking the mirrors now as Superboy in that GTR, just biding his time in this second stint. He hasn't really been pushing too hard. He's not really been racing anyone either, which has probably helped his tyre wear as well and his lap times, because he has now still got more grip to offer than what Doug has in the Lexus, and he's now staring at a P5 finish. If he can just keep it clinical, he's got just over 6 minutes left to make this overtake, and by the rate that he's been closing in, I think that is more than enough time to have at least a go at overtaking. Mike just keeping a brief gap over Razor, not pulling away too much. I think he is now settling in for the finish of the race, just trying to keep that gap as it is. And Petrol just losing out again. So whatever Bradders is doing in that first sector is really working for him, because he builds a massive gap coming through the first half of the lap. He's built almost a second over Petrol. So this is very much a tug of war between these two, because at one stage it looks like the gap is less than a second, and then the gap is then close to 2 seconds. So these two will be one to watch for the remainder of the season as to who's going to come out on top, because it very much is just waiting to see who makes a mistake, I believe, out of these two. As I mentioned earlier, War Eagle now with the superior grip against Barr. I think Barr really is struggling at this stage in the race. He already had that crash earlier on, and now War Eagle looking to make that overtake stick on the Lexus. He will have the superior straight line speed coming down to 130R, so we'll see if he's got just enough purchase coming off this corner. He has kept it quite tight and followed him closely, so I think the move is definitely on here for War Eagle coming down to 130R. We have already seen a few overtakes here from other GTRs as well. I don't think he's quite close enough though, so he's going to have to, you can see him there lifting off the throttle, trying to just get better rotation, and I think he might, from this point, he's going to have to set himself up for turn 1. If he can get the move into turn 1, that is going to be really good for him, because he's going to be able to put Barr in his dirty air and potentially pull away on those fresher tyres. Barr, I did think, had a bit of wheel spin coming out of that chicane. I did hear one of the cars having wheel spin, but he's still managed to just about hold off. But you can see Barr down to his last third of the tyre performance, and you can see the visible understeer of that car just not working for him at all. And War Eagle now all over the back of that Lexus, so Barr seemingly may be delaying the inevitable at this stage, as the Lexus is just not providing the grip that he wants at this stage. He has set a personal best lap though, only a couple of laps ago, so the fuel load really is affecting the cars out there, as the cars are just getting faster and faster. But the two Americans seemingly looking to continue their battle towards the end of the race. And TDC has got rear end damage there, unfortunately, but as I mentioned, still circulating, still scoring those points that he needs to. And the gap between these two just stalemating again, so I think Bradders has maybe had a little bit of a wobble, seeing the pressure being applied from Petrol behind, but he has kept it now at a comfortable gap. I think if he can just keep on driving like this, he's only got 2 laps as it stands, I believe, judging how much time is left in the race. So this is the penultimate lap of the race. There's only 2 laps left before the end, and Barr and War Eagle not as close together this time, but Barr clips the grass coming into 130R. He goes off the track. I don't know if that's going to be a track limits penalty for him. War Eagle looking up the inside, but Barr covers that one off extremely early, but he has jumped the curb a little bit. Does that give Barr a track limits penalty? This is for the 9th place that War Eagle lost earlier on in the race. I think Barr just about got away with that. And War Eagle, has he got enough fuel there, War Eagle? Because he will still have, he's still got 2 laps to do, and I don't know if War Eagle's got enough fuel to get to the end. So that could explain why he was so quick compared to Barr, because he's got less weight in the car because of the less fuel that he's carrying. So I don't know if War Eagle's actually got enough fuel to make it to the end. So that could be an absolute disaster for War Eagle on what was looking like a very promising 2-stop strategy. And I do believe that Small Jack will have enough fuel for 1 more lap, although I don't think he's leaving any tyre life left on his medium compounds, because the slide out of that spoon curve that he just got was almost going round on him. So the driver's now heading onto the final lap of the race. I think I have crossed the line already, heading into turn 1. And Bradders just trying to break the toe, not giving Petrol any chance coming into the final lap of the race. And I think this is really, apart from War Eagle and Bar, this is the only battle on track because everyone is really struggling on the old tyres at the moment. Probably one of the most punishing tracks on the calendar for tyre wear, so this is really showing the driver's skill as it stands, just for who can get their tyres towards the end. I think Bradders has really got poor tyre wear right now compared to that NSX, which you would expect from a front-engined to mid-engined tyre wear comparison. But he might just have enough of a gap. As long as he can get through the next two corners safely and just apply the traction nice and smoothly, I think he should have this one in the bag with that GTR's better grip. And Petrol almost running into the back there. He's gone very deep, and I think that has just cost him. That might have sealed second place there for Brad, as I was talking about. As long as he has a clean exit out of the next spoon corner, I don't think there's really a chance for Petrol to close in anymore. And I'm going to try and catch Bar and War Eagle on this last lap of the race. Pappy is the first of the drivers to finish. He crosses the line in P11 with Simon in P12. TDC will be 13th. And as I round the final corner, not really seen much from me this race. It's been a bit boring, but I come across the line to win the season opener at Suzuka for the Lexus car. And Bradders is seemingly still under pressure despite Petrol making that mistake. The tyres just about giving up there. Bradders, in his debut race, gets on the podium, just fending off Petrol there for P3. Small Jack on the alternative strategy, almost running out of fuel, comes across the line in P4. Doug Barrow in P5, what was looking like a potential podium, it just wasn't meant to be with that Lexus giving up on him. Superboy in P6. Mike holding off Razor and pulling away from Razor actually at the end to get P7. Razor in P8. Bar and War Eagle, the final drivers to now come across the line. Bar almost running out of fuel there. I don't know, has he got enough fuel to make it to the end? So this could be extremely bad. They're both running equally low fuel here, and I don't know if they're going to run out, you know, because this could be about who's just saved that extra little bit of percentage. This could be a drag race to the line, and I think Bar is just going to hang on just ahead of War Eagle for that 9th place. So seemingly a frantic final lap there. But with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you for round 2.